Far beyond the last spiral arm of the galaxy, where stars grew thin and the dark between them grew wide, the Krovan Dominion scout ship, Vantar's eye, drifted through empty space. Its sensors had been silent for 3 days. The crew had grown bored, and boredom on a Krovan ship was dangerous, because Krovan sailors liked to gamble, and Krovan gambling often ended in fights. Fleet Commander Raxus Thal sat on the bridge, watching the black screen in front of him. He was a tall alien with gray skin and 4 eyes, 2 of which were always half closed, as if he was always a little tired of everything. He had been a commander for 30 cycles, and in that time, he had explored more empty space than any other Krovan alive. He was good at his job. He was also very good at being unimpressed. "Commander," said his sensor officer, a smaller Krovan named Ieth, "we have something." Raxus opened his tired eyes a little wider. "Define something." "A structure. Beyond the edge of this galaxy, in the dark space between galaxies. It should not be there. Nothing should be there." Raxus stood up and walked to the screen. On it was a single blinking dot, far out past where any star should reasonably exist. He frowned, which on a Krovan face meant all 4 eyes narrowed at once. "Show me a close scan," he said. The screen changed. What appeared was strange. It was not a planet. It was not an asteroid. It was a structure, built by hands, or by something like hands. It was shaped like a long metal cross, with towers rising from its middle, and lights blinking slowly along its edges, like a heartbeat. "A station," Ieth said, "built in the middle of nothing. No star nearby, no planet nearby, just built there, on purpose." "Who would build something so far from home?" Raxus asked, mostly to himself. "I do not know, Commander, but the structure is old, very old. The metal has not changed in a long time, and—" Ieth paused, checking her readings again. "It appears to be powered down. No engine signal. No weapon signal. No communication signal. It looks abandoned." Raxus rubbed his chin, a habit he had picked up from watching old recordings of alien diplomats. He liked to think it made him look wise. "Abandoned structures do not build themselves in the middle of intergalactic space," he said. "Someone put it there. Someone with very advanced engines, since it takes great power just to travel this far from any star system. And if it is truly abandoned, then whoever built it either died or left or is hiding," Ieth finished. The bridge went quiet. Krovan crews did not like the word hiding. It made them think of ambushes, and Krovan ships had learned to fear ambushes the hard way, many cycles ago, during their long and painful war with the Threll Empire, a war that the Krovan had barely won and never forgotten. "Send a drone," Raxus said finally. "A small one. No weapons. Just eyes. Let us see what waits for us before we decide anything." The drone was launched an hour later. It was a simple machine, shaped like a silver teardrop, built for watching, not for fighting. It floated silently across the dark gap between the galaxy and the strange structure, sending back pictures every few minutes. The pictures showed more details as the drone got closer. The structure was enormous, far bigger than it had first appeared. It stretched for kilometers, built from a dull gray metal that did not shine even in starlight. There were no windows. There were no visible doors. There was only a symbol, painted in faded red, near the top of the tallest tower. It looked like a shield, with a single star inside it. "Do we know this symbol?" Raxus asked. Ieth searched through the ship's old records, files collected over hundreds of cycles of Krovan exploration. It took a long time. Finally, she found something. "Commander, I found one match. It is very old, from before the Dominion even had spaceflight. It is the symbol of a species called humans." Raxus tilted his head. "Humans. I have heard rumors. A small species, from a small planet, somewhere near the center of this galaxy. They were never considered a threat. Weak technology. Short lives. Aggressive, but disorganized." "That was the old report, Commander. It is over 200 cycles old." 200 cycles is a long time," Raxus said quietly. "Species change in 200 cycles." He looked back at the screen, at the fading red shield with its single star. floating alone in the vast darkness between galaxies. Something about it made him uneasy, though he could not say exactly why. Perhaps it was the silence. Perhaps it was the size. Perhaps it was simply the idea that a species once thought weak had built something so far from anyone else that no one had noticed it for 200 cycles. The drone continued its approach, sending back more images. As it grew closer, new details appeared. Long metal fins along the sides of the structure, which Iyeth guessed were heat exchangers, meaning something inside still produced power. Small round shapes near the base of the towers, which might have been sensor domes or might have been something else entirely. And near the very bottom of the structure, a massive door, large enough to fit a warship through, sealed shut and covered in more of the same fading red paint. "Commander," Iyeth said, her voice a little tighter now. "The drone is picking up a faint energy signature. Very faint. It could be background radiation, or it could be something waking up." "Bring the drone closer," Raxus ordered. "I want to see inside that door." The drone drifted nearer, its small thrusters firing softly to adjust its path. It reached a distance of only a few hundred meters from the great sealed door. The camera zoomed in, capturing every detail of the ancient metal, the streaks of rust, the faded paint. Then, without warning, a single blue light appeared on the door, right in the center, right at eye level for a human, though there were no humans to see it. "Commander, the energy signature just spiked," Iyeth said quickly. "Something activated." "Pull the drone back," Raxus ordered. But it was too late. A small panel slid open beside the blue light, and from it extended a thin metal arm, no longer than a human hand, holding what looked like a simple camera lens. The lens turned, slowly, deliberately, until it pointed directly at the drone. For a long moment, nothing happened. The two machines simply looked at each other, one built by aliens who had crossed a galaxy to gamble away their boredom, and one built by a species who had once been called weak. Then a voice came through, broadcast on every frequency the drone could receive, a calm, synthetic voice, speaking in a language the ship's translator needed several seconds to decode. "Unknown vessel identified. You are approaching Outpost Meridian, a defended installation of the human expanse. This facility is not abandoned. Please state your intentions, or withdraw." On the bridge of the Vantar's eye. Every eye turned to Raxus Thal. He stared at the screen for a long moment, watching the small mechanical arm slowly retract back into the door. His mind raced through possibilities. It could be a trick, an old recording left running by a dead species, designed to scare away scavengers. It could be an automated system with nothing behind it but empty rooms and broken machines. Or it could be exactly what it claimed to be, a defended installation, still active, still watching. 200 cycles after the humans were last recorded as weak and unimportant. "Do not respond," Raxus said slowly. "Bring the drone back to the ship, slowly, no sudden movements." "Yes, Commander." As the drone began its retreat, the voice spoke again, calm as before, but this time it added something new. "Warning acknowledged. Please note that unauthorized reconnaissance of this installation has been logged. Have a pleasant journey." The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. "It let us go," Iyeth said, almost in disbelief. "It could have destroyed the drone. It did not." "No," Raxus said, his four eyes narrowed in thought. "It did not need to. It wanted us to leave and tell others what we found. That is not the behavior of a weak or dying station. That is the behavior of something very confident." He turned away from the screen and looked at his crew, all of whom were watching him now, waiting for orders. "Send a full report back to the Dominion Council," he said. "Tell them we found a human base at the edge of this galaxy, far from any star, still active after 200 cycles, and it spoke to us like it was not afraid at all." "And our own orders, Commander?" Iyeth asked. "Do we return home, or do we investigate further?" Raxus looked back at the tiny blinking dot on the screen, the distant shape of Outpost Meridian, sitting alone in the vast dark, patient and silent, like a spider waiting in the middle of an empty web. "We wait for reinforcements," he said, "because I believe, Iyeth, that we have just found something the Dominion has never seen before, a fortress, built by a species that everyone thought was small and weak, hidden in the one place no one would ever think to look. And I do not believe, not for one moment, that it is truly alone out here. Far away, inside the silent walls of Outpost Meridian, deep beneath the sealed door and the fading red shield, systems that had rested for 200 cycles began, one by one, to wake up. Lights flickered on in long dark corridors. Old engines hummed back to life, and somewhere in the heart of the station, a single message was quietly recorded and sent out into the dark, toward the distant lights of the human expanse, carrying 6 simple words that would soon change everything. They found us. Prepare the response. The Vantar's eye turned slowly away from the strange structure and began its long journey back toward Crovan space, carrying with it the first images anyone outside the human expanse had ever seen of Outpost Meridian. None of the crew realized, as they watched the small station shrink behind them into the darkness, that they had just knocked on the door of something far greater than a simple base. They had knocked on the door of a fortress built to guard the edge of everything the humans loved, and though it had let them go this time, it would not be so gentle the next. The report from the Vantar's eye reached Crovan Dominion space 20 days later, carried by a fast courier ship built only for messages, not for fighting. It landed on the ring station orbiting the Dominion's capital world, and within hours, the images of Outpost Meridian were being studied by the highest council of the Crovan military. Grand Marshal Dos Karen, leader of the Dominion fleet, watched the recording of the small mechanical arm turning to look at the drone. He watched it 3 times before he spoke. A single structure, he said, built far outside any galaxy, powered after 200 cycles of silence, and speaking to us with confidence instead of fear. He turned to his officers. This is either the work of a dying species clinging to old defenses, or it is something else. The humans were never a major threat, Grand Marshal, said one of the younger officers, a Crovan named Peth Solvane, who had studied old alien records for most of his career. Our last full report on them is old, yes, but even then, they were considered primitive by galactic standards. Slow ships, weak weapons, a short lifespan that kept their leaders changing every few cycles, which made their politics unstable and their military plans inconsistent. And yet, Doss said, somehow, this primitive and unstable species built a fortress so far from any star that it took our scouts pure luck to find it, and equipped that fortress with technology advanced enough to still function flawlessly 200 cycles later. The room was quiet. No one had a good answer. Send the second battle fleet, Doss said finally. Not to attack. Not yet. Send them to observe, to test the defenses carefully, and to bring back real information. If this station truly holds nothing but old machines and empty halls, we will know soon enough. And if it is something more, he paused, looking again at the still image of the small blue light on the great sealed door. Then we will know that too, before it becomes a problem we cannot control. Fleet Commander Vessa Thorne was given command of the mission. She was younger than Raxus Thal, sharper in temper, and known throughout the Dominion for her impatience. She did not like waiting, and she did not like being told to be careful. But orders were orders, and the second battle fleet, 12 warships strong, set out toward the edge of the galaxy less than a week after receiving them. It took nearly a month to reach the location where Outpost Meridian had first been found. When the fleet arrived, the station was exactly where it had been, sitting silently in the empty dark, its lights blinking slowly along its edges like before. No change in the structure, reported Vessa's sensor officer. Same size, same power signature. It appears to still be at low activity. Appearances can be arranged, Vessa muttered. She did not trust silence. Silence from an enemy usually meant one of 2 things. Either they were truly weak, or they were waiting. Send 3 probe drones, she ordered. Have them fly a wide pattern around the structure. I want full sensor data on every surface, every opening, every possible weakness. The 3 drones launched and spread out, circling Outpost Meridian at a careful distance. For the first 10 minutes, nothing happened. The station remained silent, its lights blinking their slow, steady rhythm. Then the voice returned. The same calm, synthetic tone as before, broadcast across every channel the fleet was monitoring. Unknown fleet identified. 12 vessels detected. You are approaching Outpost Meridian, a defended installation of the human expanse. Unauthorized reconnaissance in progress. Please withdraw your probes and state your intentions. Vesa smiled, though it was not a friendly smile. So it does speak. Ignore the warning. Continue the scan. The drones continued their slow circles around the station. 30 more seconds passed. Then the voice spoke again, and this time, there was a small change in its tone, something that almost sounded like patience running out, though it was hard to say for certain with a machine. Final warning. Withdraw your reconnaissance drones immediately, or defensive measures will be activated. Ignore it, Vesa said again, leaning forward in her seat. Let us see what defensive measures a 200-cycle-old station can possibly still perform. 15 seconds later, panels along the surface of Outpost Meridian began to open. Dozens of them, spread across every visible section of the massive structure. From each panel extended a short, thick barrel, gleaming faintly under the light of the drone's own scanning beams. Commander, the sensor officer said quickly, those are weapon emplacements. A lot of them. I am reading power buildup in all of them at once. Vesa's smile faded slightly. How many? At least 200 separate weapon systems, just on the sections we can currently see. There could be more on the far side of the structure that we cannot scan yet. Before Vesa could give another order, the weapons fired. It was not a slow buildup, not a warning shot, not a single test blast. It was 200 weapons firing in near-perfect unison, streaks of blue-white energy crossing the dark in less than a second, and all 3 probe drones were destroyed instantly, vaporized so completely that there was nothing left to scan, nothing left to study, nothing but 3 small flashes of light that faded as quickly as they had appeared. The bridge of Vesa's flagship went completely silent. Report, she said, her voice tighter now than before. All 3 drones destroyed, Commander. Direct hits, all of them, from a distance of over 4,000 kilometers. The accuracy was perfect. There was no time for evasive movement. The drones simply ceased to exist. Vesa stared at the screen, at the image of Outpost Meridian, its 200 weapon panels now closing slowly back into its hull, the blue-white glow fading from their barrels. The station had not moved. It had not launched a single fighter or sent a single ship to intercept. It had simply reached out, from a distance most weapons could never manage with such accuracy, and destroyed everything that had come too close, all without a single wasted shot. That was not the response of a dying station, Vesa said quietly. That was the response of something that has been ready for this exact moment for a very long time. Orders, Commander? The sensor officer asked. Vesa did not answer immediately. She was thinking about the small mechanical arm that had looked at Raxus Thal's drone and let it go. She was thinking about the calm voice that had given not 1, but 2 clear warnings before it acted, and she was thinking about the 200 weapons that had fired in perfect unison the moment the warnings were ignored. This was not their real strength, she said finally. This was a demonstration, a small piece of what that station is capable of, shown to us only because we refused to listen the first time. If 200 weapons on the outer hull can destroy 3 drones without effort, I do not want to imagine what waits inside, or what waits behind it. Do we attack, Commander? Asked one of her officers, a hard-faced Krovan named Torv, who had never lost a battle in his career, and did not enjoy the idea of retreating from anything. Vesa considered it for a long moment. 12 warships against a single station, no matter how well armed, seemed like good odds on paper. But paper odds meant nothing against an enemy who had already proven they could hit a moving target from 4,000 kilometers away with perfect accuracy, using only their outer defenses. No, she said. We do not attack, not yet. We were sent to gather information. And we have gathered enough to know that this station is far more dangerous than the Council believed. We return home, and we bring the Grand Marshal proof that the humans are not the primitive species our old records describe. As the fleet began preparing to withdraw, the calm synthetic voice spoke one final time, broadcast across every channel, as steady and unbothered as it had been from the very beginning. Reconnaissance vessels destroyed as warned. This installation extends no further hostility to retreating forces. If your intentions become aggressive, full defensive protocols will engage. Safe travels. Vesa listened to the message twice before she finally spoke again. It let us retreat, she said, almost to herself, just like it let the first ship retreat. It is not trying to destroy us. It is trying to send a message. What message, Commander? Torv asked. Vesa looked one last time at the image of Outpost Meridian on her screen, silent and still, its weapons hidden once more beneath its ancient gray hull, waiting patiently in the dark between galaxies. That whoever built this station is not afraid of us, she said, and that we should be very afraid of them. The second battle fleet turned away and began the long journey back to Krovan space, carrying with them sensor readings, battle data, and the unsettling knowledge that the human expanse, once dismissed as weak and disorganized, had somehow built a fortress capable of destroying targets with terrifying precision, from a distance no Dominion weapon could match. But far behind them, deep inside Outpost Meridian, the station's systems were doing more than simply resetting after the brief battle. New messages were being sent, not just toward the heart of human space this time, but along old, hidden communication lines that stretched far beyond the station itself. Lines that had not been used in 200 cycles, carrying a single urgent request to systems and people who had been waiting a very long time for exactly this moment to arrive. Contact confirmed. Hostile forces probing our position, requesting full activation of Meridian Protocol. Somewhere far away, in the heart of the human expanse, alarms began to sound. Grand Marshal Doss Karen listened to Vesa Thorne's report in silence, watching the recording of the 200 weapon panels opening and firing in perfect unison, watching the 3 drones vanish in less than a second, watching the calm voice deliver its warnings before and after the attack. When the recording ended, he sat quietly for a long moment before speaking. 200 cycles ago, he said, our records described the humans as primitive, slow ships, weak weapons, a species not worth serious concern. He looked around the council chamber at the gathered officers. Clearly, those records are no longer accurate. Grand Marshal, said Peth Solvane, the young officer who studied old alien records, if I may, species evolve. 200 cycles is enough time for even a primitive people to advance far beyond what we once knew of them. It is possible the humans experienced some kind of technological transformation in that time. A war, a discovery, something that pushed them forward faster than expected. Possible, Doss agreed, but it does not matter how they became strong. What matters is that they are strong now, and that station sits directly on a path our scouts have used for generations to explore the edge of this galaxy. If the humans are building fortresses out there, we must know why, and we must know how far their strength extends. Do we attack the station directly? Asked Torv, who had returned with Vesa's fleet, and still bristled at the idea of retreating from a single structure. No, Doss said firmly. Vesa was right to withdraw. A single station, with 200 visible weapons and perfect accuracy, is not something we throw ships against blindly. We do not know what else it holds. We do not know if there are more stations like it. We do not know the true size of the human expanse in the present day. He paused, thinking carefully. We send the 3rd and 4th battle fleets together, 40 ships, enough force to overwhelm any single defense, no matter how strong, and enough to gather real intelligence on what we are truly facing. 40 ships is a significant commitment, Grand Marshal, Peth said carefully. If this becomes a war with a species stronger than we believed, we may be starting something the Dominion is not fully prepared for. Doss looked at him for a long moment. Then let us hope, Officer Solvane, that this station is simply an old ruin with good defenses, and not the edge of something much larger. But if it is the edge of something larger, I would rather learn that now, with 40 ships, than later, with none. The order was given. 40 warships gathered at the edge of Krovan space and began the long journey toward Outpost Meridian, led by Grand Marshal Doss Karen himself, who insisted on commanding the mission personally. It took nearly 6 weeks to reach the location. When the fleet arrived, Outpost Meridian looked exactly as it had before. Silent, still, its lights blinking their slow, patient rhythm along the edges of its ancient gray hull. No change in status. reported the sensor officer. Same power signature as recorded by Fleet Commander Thorne. The station appears dormant. Doss studied the image on his screen carefully. Do not mistake dormant for weak, he said. Prepare all ships. Full combat readiness. We approach together, in formation, and we do not send probe drones this time. If it wishes to warn us, it can warn all 40 ships at once. The fleet moved forward in a wide formation. Warships spread across the dark in a pattern designed to avoid presenting an easy target for any single weapon system. As they closed the distance, the calm synthetic voice returned, broadcast across every channel, exactly as it had for the two fleets before. Unknown fleet identified. 40 vessels detected. You are approaching Outpost Meridian, a defended installation of the human expanse. This force exceeds standard reconnaissance parameters and is classified as a hostile incursion. Withdraw immediately, or defensive protocols will engage without further warning. Doss listened carefully. He noted something the previous reports had not mentioned. This time, there was only one warning, not two, and the voice had made it clear that no second warning would follow. It knows the size of our fleet matters, he said quietly to his officers. It is telling us this is different from before. Orders, Grand Marshal? Torv asked, his hand hovering near the weapons controls of his own ship. Doss considered his options carefully. 40 ships was a massive force, more than enough to destroy nearly any single target the Dominion had ever faced. But he had watched the recording of 200 weapons firing in perfect unison, hitting 3 fast-moving drones with total accuracy from over 4,000 kilometers away. If that level of precision extended to a much larger arsenal, 40 ships might not be nearly enough. We do not withdraw, he said finally. But we do not simply attack blindly either. Fleet, spread into attack formation. Weapons hot, but hold fire until my order. I want a full sensor sweep of the station's surface the moment we are in range. If it opens its weapon panels again, I want to know the exact number and location of every single one before we commit to anything. The fleet spread out further, 40 warships arranging themselves into a wide net around Outpost Meridian, careful to avoid grouping too closely together. The station remained silent as they approached, its lights blinking steadily, giving no outward sign of the storm that was about to begin. Then, without any further warning, the surface of Outpost Meridian changed. Panels opened, not just the 200 that had been seen before, but far more, spreading across sections of the station that had appeared completely smooth and featureless in previous scans. The sensor officer's voice cracked slightly as she read the numbers. Grand Marshal, I am reading over 800 weapon emplacements active. New sections of the hull are opening that we never detected before. There are also, she paused, checking her readings twice. There are also 6 large bay doors opening along the base of the station. I am detecting launch signatures. Fighters, small vessels, a lot of them. How many? Doss asked, his voice level despite the tightening feeling in his chest. Estimating at least 200 fighter craft, Grand Marshal, and the number is still climbing. Doss stared at the screen, watching as small silver shapes began pouring out of the station's bay doors, like a swarm disturbed from its nest. 800 weapon emplacements, 200 fighters and rising, all from a single station that had appeared, on every previous scan, to be dormant and quiet. This was never a ruin, he said quietly. This was never simply an old defense post left running by accident. This is a fortress, built and maintained on purpose, hidden here specifically because someone wanted it far from prying eyes. Orders, Grand Marshal? Torv asked again, more urgently this time, as the swarm of human fighters began forming into tight, coordinated groups, moving with a precision that suggested every pilot, or every automated system, knew exactly what it was doing. Doss made his decision. All ships, engage defensive formation. Fire on the fighters first. Keep them from closing the distance. Hold the station itself for a coordinated strike, once we understand its weapon range fully. Do not, under any circumstances, let any single ship become isolated from the fleet. The order was given, and the battle began. The Dominion warships opened fire on the incoming swarm of human fighters, streaks of energy crossing the dark in bright, deadly lines. But the fighters did not fly in the predictable patterns the Dominion gunners expected. They moved in tight, twisting formations, breaking apart and reforming constantly, making it difficult for the larger, slower Dominion weapons to track them accurately. "They are too fast," one gunner reported, frustration clear in his voice. "Our targeting systems cannot lock properly. They keep breaking pattern before the shot lands." Meanwhile, the station itself had not yet fired a single shot from its main weapon emplacements. It simply waited, its 800 barrels gleaming faintly, tracking the movements of the Dominion fleet with patient precision, as if it were studying them, learning their formations, waiting for the perfect moment. The human fighters, despite their small size, proved far more dangerous than anyone had expected. They struck at the Dominion ships with quick, precise attacks, targeting engine sections and weapon arrays, instead of trying to destroy entire vessels outright, weakening the fleet's ability to fight and retreat, rather than simply causing damage for its own sake. "Grand Marshal," the sensor officer called out, her voice tense. "The Kelov has lost main engine power. The Threndus reports weapon system failure on its port side." Doss watched the battle unfold on his screen, 40 ships fighting against a swarm of fighters that fought with more coordination and precision than he had ever seen from any species, human or otherwise. And still, the great station itself had not fired a single shot from its main arsenal. "It is letting the fighters wear us down first," he realized aloud. "It is saving its true strength for when we are already weakened." He understood in that moment, standing on the bridge of his flagship, watching his 40-ship fleet struggle against a swarm of fighters from a single station, that the Dominion had made a terrible miscalculation. The humans were not weak. They had never truly been weak. They had simply been quiet, hidden, patient, building something far beyond what anyone believed possible, waiting in the dark at the edge of everything, ready for exactly this moment. "All ships," Doss said, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around him, "prepare for immediate withdrawal on my signal. We came here to learn what this station could do, and we have learned enough to know that we are not prepared to fight it directly, not with 40 ships, and perhaps not with 400. As the order to withdraw began spreading through the fleet, the great station of Outpost Meridian finally began to move. Slowly, deliberately, its massive weapon emplacements turned as one, aiming not at the retreating human fighters returning to their bays, but at the Dominion fleet itself, glowing brighter and brighter as they charged for their first true volley. And the calm synthetic voice returned one final time, broadcast across every channel, as steady and unhurried as it had always been. "Hostile intent confirmed. Full defensive protocols engaged. This is no longer a warning." The 800 weapon emplacements of Outpost Meridian fired together, and the dark space around the station lit up like a second sun had been born. Grand Marshal Doss Karen watched, helpless, as 3 of his ships vanished in the first volley alone, struck by beams of energy so precise and so powerful that their shields, hardened by generations of Dominion engineering, failed to stop them entirely. The Kelov, already crippled from the fighter attacks, took a direct hit to its main reactor and broke apart in complete silence, the sound of its destruction swallowed by the vacuum of space. Grand Marshal, the Threndus is gone. The Avril has lost half its hull, the sensor officer shouted, her calm voice from earlier now cracked with fear. "All ships, withdraw now," Doss commanded, no longer trying to hide the urgency in his voice. "Full retreat, scatter formation, do not group together." The remaining Dominion ships broke apart and began firing their engines at maximum power, trying to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the station's terrible weapons. But Outpost Meridian was not finished. Its weapon panels tracked each fleeing ship individually, adjusting aim with a speed and accuracy that seemed almost impossible for a fixed structure to achieve. Torv's ship, the Grail Van, took a glancing hit along its side, enough to knock out its shields but not enough to destroy it outright. He gritted his teeth and pushed his engines as hard as they would go, watching on his rear display as 2 more Dominion warships were struck and destroyed behind him. How is a single station tracking 40 separate targets at once with this level of accuracy? He shouted to his weapons officer, more out of frustration than expectation of an answer. I don't know, Commander. Nothing in our records describes weapon technology like this. Within minutes, the battle that had begun with 40 proud Dominion warships ended with only 26 vessels able to make the jump back toward Croven space, badly damaged, their crews shaken, their confidence shattered. The station's fighters had not even needed to chase the retreating fleet. They simply returned to their bays, mission complete, while the main weapon emplacements of Outpost Meridian continued firing until the last Dominion ship crossed beyond effective range. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the battle ended. The weapon panels of Outpost Meridian closed, one by one, folding back into the smooth gray hull as if nothing had happened at all. The station returned to its slow, patient, blinking silence, exactly as it had appeared before the fleet's arrival. Grand Marshal Doss Karen sat in his command chair, staring at the wreckage still visible on his rear display, at the drifting pieces of ships that had served the Dominion for generations, destroyed in less than 15 minutes by a single fortress that everyone had once believed belonged to a weak and primitive species. Send a full report to the Council, he said quietly. Tell them the truth. We were wrong about the humans. Terribly, dangerously wrong. Deep inside Outpost Meridian, far below the surface where the great weapon emplacements had fired, the halls were no longer silent. Lights blazed in every corridor. Automated systems moved through the station at high speed, repairing minor damage, restocking fighter bays, and preparing detailed reports on the battle that had just concluded. At the heart of the station, in a large circular room lined with screens and control panels, the station's artificial intelligence, known simply as ARIA, processed the results of the engagement. ARIA had been built for exactly this purpose, to defend Outpost Meridian for as long as necessary, using whatever force was required, without ever needing a human hand on the controls. For 200 cycles, ARIA had waited, running maintenance cycles, monitoring the dark space beyond the galaxy, and preparing for a day that many had begun to believe might never come. That day had finally arrived. ARIA compiled the full battle data, the enemy ship designs, their weapon signatures, their retreat patterns, everything that had been learned during the brief but intense engagement, and sent it all along the same hidden communication lines that had carried the first warning weeks earlier. The message traveled far, crossing the vast distance back toward the heart of human space, toward the systems and people who had built Outpost Meridian in the first place, and left it here, silent and waiting, as a guardian at the edge of everything they valued. The response came faster than expected. Less than 2 weeks later, a new signal arrived at Outpost Meridian, this one carrying more than just data. It carried coordinates, launch schedules, and a single short message that ARIA immediately flagged as Priority 1. Meridian Protocol authorized. Fleet Reyes inbound. Estimated arrival 40 days. Hold the line. V. Admiral Sarah Reyes stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Endurance, watching the stars blur past as her fleet made its long jump toward the edge of the galaxy. She was not a young woman, her hair streaked with gray, her face marked by decades of service, but her eyes were sharp, and her voice, when she spoke, carried the kind of quiet authority that made people listen without needing to be told twice. Full fleet status, she said. Her second in command, Captain Marcus Delgado, checked the readouts. 60 warships, Admiral, plus support and supply vessels. Everyone who could be spared has been sent. Meridian has been quiet for 200 years. Command wants to know exactly what woke it up, and exactly what threat we're dealing with. Sarah nodded slowly. Meridian wasn't built to sit quiet forever, Marcus. It was built because someone, a long time ago, decided that humanity needed a place to watch the dark beyond our galaxy, somewhere far enough away that no one would think to look for it, and strong enough to survive if anyone ever did. You think whoever attacked it will come back? I know they will, Sarah said. Nobody sends 40 warships against a single outpost and just walks away quietly after losing that badly. They'll regroup. They'll come back stronger, and when they do, I intend for Meridian, and everyone defending it, to be more than ready. The journey took 40 days, exactly as Arya had predicted. When Fleet Reyes finally arrived at Outpost Meridian, Sarah stood on her bridge and looked at the ancient station for the first time with her own eyes. Its gray hull marked with the faded red shield and single star, its lights blinking steadily along its edges, patient as ever. "It's smaller than I imagined," Marcus said quietly. "It doesn't need to be big," Sarah replied. "It just needs to be enough." As the fleet settled into position around the station, a familiar voice greeted them across every channel, calm, synthetic, and unmistakably relieved, in a way that only careful listeners might notice. Fleet Reyes confirmed. "Welcome to Outpost Meridian, Admiral. Station status, fully operational. Hostile forces estimated to return within 90 to 120 days, based on standard Dominion regrouping patterns, observed in prior conflicts recorded in the old database. Recommend full joint defense preparation." Sarah allowed herself a small, tired smile. "Arya, it's good to finally meet the system that's been holding this line alone for 200 years. "It is good to no longer be alone, Admiral," Arya replied simply. Sarah turned to Marcus. "Get every ship into position. Coordinate with Arya on defense grids. If the Krovan Dominion is smart, and it seems like they are, they'll come back with everything they have. I want Meridian ready for a fight far bigger than the one it already survived." Far beyond the galaxy's edge, in the quiet dark where Outpost Meridian had waited alone for 200 years, 60 human warships now stood alongside it, their crews working alongside an ancient artificial mind that had never once doubted this day would come. And far away, in Krovan space, Grand Marshal Dos Karen stood before the full Dominion Council, delivering a report that would change the course of an empire. "We were wrong about the humans," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of what he had witnessed. "They are not primitive, they are not weak. They built a fortress capable of destroying nearly half our fleet in 15 minutes, and I believe, with everything I have learned, that this fortress is only the edge of something far larger, something we do not yet fully understand." "What do you recommend, Grand Marshal?" asked one of the counselors. Doss looked around the chamber slowly before answering. "I recommend we gather everything we have," he said, "because I believe, if we do not, the next time we meet the humans in battle, it will not be at some distant outpost at the edge of a galaxy. It will be here, at the heart of our own territory, and we will not be the ones giving the warnings." The council chamber fell into a heavy, uneasy silence, as every officer present began to understand the same terrible truth that Dos Karen had already learned the hard way, beyond the edge of the stars, in the shadow of a fully armed human base that no one had ever expected to find. The Krovan Dominion did not return in 90 days, as Arya had predicted. They returned in 83, and when they arrived, they came with a force far greater than anyone at Outpost Meridian had expected. 200 warships dropped out of jump space at the edge of sensor range, filling the dark sky with a wall of gray and black hulls that stretched further than any single scan could measure at once. Grand Marshal Dos Karen had convinced the Dominion Council that half measures would only lead to more losses, and so the Council had given him nearly the entire home fleet, the largest force the Krovan Dominion had assembled in generations. On the bridge of the Endurance, Admiral Sarah Reyes watched the enemy fleet appear on her screen, ship after ship after ship, until the number climbing on her readout finally settled at 211. "That's a lot more than we prepared for," Marcus said quietly beside her. "Arya, confirm fleet numbers and station readiness," Sarah said, her voice steady, despite the tightening in her chest. "Confirmed, Admiral. 211 Dominion warships detected. Outpost Meridian is at full operational capacity. All 846 primary weapon emplacements are charged and ready. Fighter bays are fully stocked with 400 craft. Fleet Reyes reports 60 warships ready for combat, with all repairs from the earlier skirmish completed." Sarah nodded slowly, doing quick math in her head. 211 Dominion ships against 60 human warships and one heavily armed station. The odds, on paper, still favored the Dominion by a wide margin, but Sarah had not spent 30 years in the fleet without learning that battles were rarely won on numbers alone. "All ships, take defensive positions around Meridian," she ordered. "Arya, I want full coordination between the station's weapon systems and our fleet's targeting computers. If we're going to survive this, we fight as one force, not two. Coordination protocols already active, Admiral. Meridian's targeting network is synced with all 60 vessels of Fleet Reyes. Across the dark gap between the two fleets, Grand Marshal Dos Karen studied the human formation on his own screen, noting the way the 60 warships had positioned themselves, not simply around the station, but woven into a tight defensive pattern that used Meridian's own weapon coverage to protect gaps in the human fleet's formation. They fight together, he said quietly. Ship and station, moving as a single mind. Orders, Grand Marshal, Torv asked, his voice carrying the weight of the last battle's losses, tempered now with grim determination, rather than overconfidence. We attack in 3 waves, Doss said. The first wave draws their fire and maps their full weapon coverage. The second wave targets the station directly, focusing everything on breaking its main defenses. The third wave finishes whatever remains, station and fleet together, before they can recover. He paused. We lost 40 ships last time by attacking as one blind mass. We will not make that mistake again. The order was given, and the battle for Outpost Meridian began. The first wave of 70 Dominion warships surged forward, weapons blazing, and Sarah's fleet met them head-on, human fighters pouring out of Meridian's bay doors in tight, coordinated swarms, while the station's weapon emplacements opened fire in devastating, precise volleys. Ships on both sides began falling in the opening minutes, streaks of light and fire painting the dark in violent, beautiful patterns of destruction. They're testing our coverage, Marcus said, watching the enemy movement patterns, trying to map every weapon angle before committing fully. Let them look, Sarah said. Arya, randomize secondary weapon activation patterns. Don't let them build an accurate picture. Randomizing now, Admiral. The battle raged on, brutal and unrelenting. Dominion ships that had learned hard lessons from the first engagement now moved in tighter, more careful formations, using their numbers to overwhelm sections of Meridian's defenses rather than spreading out as they had before. Slowly, painfully, the sheer size of the Dominion fleet began to tell. Human ships took damage. Some were lost entirely. Meridian's outer weapon emplacements, though devastatingly accurate, could not fire fast enough to stop every incoming volley from over 200 enemy vessels. Admiral, we're losing the Firelight and the 2. Kestrel Bay, Marcus reported grimly. Shields critical on 6 other vessels. Sarah gripped the edge of her command chair, watching the battle unfold with the calm focus of someone who had trained her whole life for exactly this moment. Arya, what's Meridian's core status? Outer defenses holding at 72% efficiency, Admiral. Core systems remain fully protected. I am detecting a pattern in the Dominion's second wave formation. They intend to focus fire on Meridian's primary weapon array in the next assault. Then we don't let them, Sarah said. Marcus, pull our remaining fighters back to reinforce the array's outer shield grid. Arya, prepare a full power surge to the primary weapons. If they want to focus everything on breaking our main defenses, let's make sure that when they do, we hit back with everything we have. The second wave of Dominion ships surged forward exactly as Arya had predicted, 100 more warships adding their fire to the already brutal engagement, concentrating everything on Meridian's primary weapon array in a desperate attempt to silence the station's most dangerous weapons before they could be used again. For a tense, terrible moment, it seemed as though the strategy might work. Meridian's shields flickered dangerously under the concentrated assault, alarms blaring through every corridor of the station, as Arya diverted power from every non-essential system to keep the primary array intact. Shields at 30% and falling, Arya reported, its voice as calm as ever despite the crisis. Recommend immediate power surge activation. Do it, Sarah said. Now. The primary weapon array of Outpost Meridian released a single, massive burst of energy, far more powerful than anything it had used before. A beam of light so bright, it turned the dark battlefield around the station white for a brief, blinding second. When the light faded, 23 Dominion warships that had been concentrating their fire on the array were simply gone, destroyed instantly by the concentrated power of a weapon that had been saving its full strength for exactly this moment. On the bridge of his flagship, Grand Marshal Dos Karen watched the destruction of nearly a quarter of his second wave in stunned silence. "That is not possible," Torv said quietly. "No single weapon should hold that kind of power." "And yet it does," Dos said, his voice heavy. He watched the remaining ships of his fleet, still numbering well over 100, continuing to press their attack against the human line, but the momentum had clearly shifted. The human ships, though battered and reduced in number, fought with renewed strength, coordinated perfectly with the station's remaining weapons, striking with precision that came from two forces that had learned, over the course of this long and terrible battle, exactly how to fight as one. The third wave never launched. As Dominion losses continued to mount, faster now than the fleet could sustain, Dos Karen made the hardest decision of his long career. "All ships, disengage," he ordered. "Full retreat. We are done here." The remaining Dominion fleet, battered and reduced from 211 ships to just under 90, turned and fled back toward the safety of their own galaxy, leaving behind the wreckage of over 100 warships scattered across the dark space around Outpost Meridian. On the bridge of the Endurance, Sarah Reyes watched the enemy fleet retreat, her own ship's hull scarred and battered, but still standing, still fighting, still alive. "Confirm enemy withdrawal," she said quietly. "Confirmed, Admiral," Arya replied. "Dominion forces retreating at maximum speed. No further hostile action detected." Marcus let out a long breath beside her. "We held 60 ships and one station against 211, and we held. We held because we didn't fight alone," Sarah said, glancing at the ancient, battle-scarred hull of Outpost Meridian, visible through the bridge window, its lights still blinking steadily, despite everything it had just endured. Arya held this line by itself for 200 years, waiting for reinforcements that took 200 years to finally need sending. That's not luck. That's the kind of patience and strength this entire expanse was built on. In the weeks that followed, reinforcements poured into Outpost Meridian from across human space. Engineers and soldiers and scientists eager to study the ancient station that had proven itself far stronger than anyone, even its own builders, had ever expected. What had once been a lonely, forgotten outpost at the very edge of the galaxy slowly became something new, a symbol, a proof that even in the quietest, most distant corners of human territory, strength and readiness had never truly faded. Back in Krovan space, Grand Marshal Dos Karen stood once more before the Dominion Council, delivering a final report on the battle that would be remembered for generations. "We attacked with 211 ships," he said, "and we were forced to retreat. Not because the humans outnumbered us, not because their technology was simply superior in every way, but because they fought with a coordination, a patience, and a willingness to prepare for a fight that might not come for 200 years, that we, as a Dominion, have never matched." He paused, looking around the silent chamber. "I recommend, with the greatest urgency, that we open communication with the human expanse, not as conquerors, not as enemies seeking a second chance at war, but as neighbors who have finally learned, the hard way, that this galaxy is far too large and far too dangerous for any of us to face alone." The Council took his recommendation seriously, and in the months that followed, careful, cautious communication began between the Krovan Dominion and the human expanse, born not from friendship, but from the hard-earned respect of two powers who had met in battle and walked away with a clearer understanding of exactly what the other was capable of. And at the very edge of the galaxy, in the quiet dark between the stars, Outpost Meridian continued to stand, its lights blinking steadily, its weapons resting silently beneath its ancient gray hull, no longer alone, no longer forgotten, but forever ready, exactly as it had always been, to defend the far edge of everything humanity had ever built.